that we don't know what life would be like without them. We live in a society which spends so much time looking to the future that we don't realise what made us today. Who was the first person that thought everyone should be entitled to the ability of a good standard of living?
Rewind 2,500 years. Cyrus the Great. He was the liberator of Babylonian and Persian empires. He called himself king of the land. But what does he have to do with human rights? Well, he brought the idea to life. His ultimate goal was to bring peace to mankind and believed that this could be achieved through equality. As the Babylonian and Persian empires expanded under Cyrus's hand, he did not force the people he conquered to abide by his empire's law, but instead kept their own institutions intact. In conjunction with this, Cyrus the Great created a movement to free slaves. He did this by allowing 40,000 Jewish slaves to leave Babylon and return to Palestine.
How did this man shape modern day's standard of living? How can we see his influence in today's society? Ultimately, Cyrus's goal was for everyone to have access to a good standard of living so that they could be fulfilled with themselves. Even today, we can see his thoughts echoed in the United Nations Statement of Human Rights, with Article 25, which states, "Right to a standard of living adequate for health and well-being of himself and his family." It has already been established that this right should be guaranteed to everyone, and now we can see that this right has been around essentially for about 2,500 years, which gives support to the fact that every human should learn about human rights because that is what they are entitled to, and it shapes how they live today.
But there are other times in history when it cannot be said that even the idea of human rights is acknowledged, and people had to literally fight for what they believed they were entitled to. Take the French Revolution for example. This saw thousands of people die horrifically, so much so that even a musical was written in its memory. At the end of the revolution, France made new laws to change how people were living. These affected the government and civil rights. The ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity were growing. The importance of the church and religion was slowly being replaced by the ideas of equality and freedom.
The French Revolution brought the change that the people needed to help them begin to shape a better life for themselves. 400 years on, we can look back at what they sacrificed and what developments were made. Modern day society can see how important human rights are to individuals. This revolution emphasises why modern society should learn about historical events because they shaped how we live today, regards to opinions and thoughts and laws, but also because we get learn from the mistakes of the past so they are not repeated and so society can move forward.
A more modern example of a person crusading for the rights of Indigenous people in Australia would be Tanya Major. Growing up in a small Aboriginal community called Kawanyama, she was taught traditional dances and ceremonies, but instead of swimming and fishing, she was made to go to school. By the time she was 16, she was the only girl in her class who was not addicted to drugs or alcohol, nor had ever been pregnant. After her experiences of living in a rural community, she applied what she'd learned to help steer young Indigenous people in the right direction for their lives, encouraging education and guiding them back on track through school attendance. She spoke out to the wider community, appealing to those who could give so that they could help her cause. And in 2007, she was Young Australian of the Year for her efforts.
Tanya exemplifies how in even Australia's modern day society, people aren't given the same choices and securities as others. Indigenous people do not have the same opportunities, especially when living in rural communities. Major is trying to lessen the disadvantage to young Indigenous people. The fact is that not everyone in the Indigenous community in Australia is able to have a healthy and safe home, as said in Article 25 of the United Nations Statement of Human Rights. Tanya is helping the young generation be able to support themselves in the future, so that they have the right they are entitled to.
So, we can now see that human rights have been around for a long time. The events and people talked about highlight the importance of the fact that people should be bothered to learn about human rights. Cyrus the Great established that everyone should be treated equally and should be entitled to certain things because they are human. The French Revolution saw people fighting for their rights, and furthermore enforces the fact that today we should learn about what they went through so that history does not repeat itself. Then we see Tanya Major, whose work with Indigenous people has allowed them to have the same opportunities as the rest of Australia. We saw the use of Article 25 to illustrate that rights have been evident in society and how it develops to what it is today in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.